I'd bring in checks in the morning. I'd take all the paper invoices back in the evening. And then my dad would give the paper invoices to my grandma, who would input this into the accounting software. I was seeing just this like completely manual, very, very outdated process that was taking up a ton of time for restaurants. And I was like, hey, maybe I could start something. Maybe I could be an entrepreneur like my parents. They had done it before. And maybe this isn't software. Maybe I could start this on my own. Hey, I'm Ty Wilson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tab Commerce. Tab provides the only corporate credit card built specifically for restaurants. We provide higher credit limits, more flexible payment terms, and just overall more control of your spending. Before I tell you more about Tab and our platform, I want to share more about me and why we started the company. Yeah, so I've grown up in restaurants pretty much my entire life. My parents quite literally met when they were working in restaurants as teenagers, and they've been in the industry ever since. When I was 10 years old, my family decided to go off on their own and start their own restaurant. And what they did was they purchased a struggling restaurant in a hockey rink. And it's called Lookout Sports Lounge. And this is just about an hour and a half outside of Toronto. And they grabbed this struggling restaurant, and my mom is an expert in the front of house. My dad's an expert in the back of house. And they just went to work, and they took decades of experience in restaurants. And I consider them extremely, extremely good operators. And they turned this restaurant around, and they turned it into an extremely good business pretty quickly by just focusing on the fundamentals. And so I quite literally grew up in this restaurant. I played hockey in it. On days off school, I was in there either doing coloring books or homework or whatever on one of the spare tables. And so I grew up quite literally in that restaurant. A few years after that, they bought and ran the same strategy a second time when they bought a struggling pub about 10 minutes away from that restaurant in a strip mall, and it's called Yield Squires. And they did the same thing where they fixed it up, really focused on the fundamentals. And today they've grown both those restaurant brands into 5 locations each. And so I've really witnessed from age 10 onwards just my parents building an incredible restaurant group and an incredible company overall. And so I've always sort of thought that I'm just going to go right into the restaurant business. I love this industry. When I went into high school, I said, I want to work in a kitchen. So as soon as I got to high school, I did not want to work in my family's restaurants. I didn't want to be the owner's son in the kitchen. I actually went to one of the restaurants at a separate restaurant group that my dad had opened up about 10 years prior. And I was a dishwasher there to start. And I absolutely loved that. That was, for me, it was the first job I had. And it really was almost like playing sports. It was an incredibly busy, high volume restaurant, very intense, in a very strong culture in the kitchen. So I started in the dish pit and worked there for about a year, and then was promoted to line cook. And I worked in the fryers for 3 years. So I was in that kitchen for all 4 years of high school. And as soon as I would leave class, I'd go to the restaurant. I'd be there at 3:30, 4 p.m. I'd hit dinner rush. Then I'd close up at 2 and be at school for 7 a.m. the next day. And so my grades absolutely were sacrificed for this, but I loved being in the kitchen. And some of my favorite memories are from that. For us, it was, I think it was a very high performing kitchen. There was about 12 or 13 of us on any given day. I simply remember Saturdays being one of my favorite days. You get there early in the morning, there's music playing, everyone's doing their prep, we're getting all set up for the day. You have a bit of a lunch rush, take a short break, and then you come back for dinner rush. And right there, it's like, my favorite time was 4:30, 5 o'clock, orders start coming a little faster, the pace picks up a bit, and then 5:30, you find yourself just getting completely slammed, the board's full. I've only ever worked in one kitchen, but for me, it was like just an incredible place to be. You would lose track of time. And then you'd find yourself at 9:30, 10 p.m. And then it's time to kind of close up and go away and do it again the next day. So I loved working in a restaurant during high school. And my goal was always to graduate high school and go back into the family business. I was sort of encouraged by my parents to actually apply for university instead of going directly into the family business, and was accepted to a business program that sort of changed my path. And now I thought, okay, maybe I'll get a business degree that'll teach me how to run a restaurant better. And I'll come back in 4 years and I'll help expand this group across the country. And that was my new plan. And so I went to the University of Toronto, moved to Toronto away from home, and found myself focused on finance. And so that was kind of where I spent my time. And over those 4 years, I got an interest in investment banking. And so I got a job in investment banking after graduation. I worked at the Bank of Montreal, actually in a mining group. So I focused on helping companies buy and sell mines across the world. So it was a complete side quest. It was like the first time in my life that I wasn't like all in on restaurants. And it was this complete sort of like chapter of my life that I love. But it didn't feel right. I think I found myself about a year into the job, not knowing what was next. I think there was a standard path in finance for, what a career looks like. And I didn't want to prescribe to that. And so that was really the idea, to go back in and maybe, get more involved in the family business again, was, sort of came up. Around that time, COVID happened. And that for us was a major shock. Obviously, restaurants were it was a huge thing for them. Nothing really changed for me aside from working from home. I was working at the bank, putting in 100 hours a week, and ultimately had to go back to my tiny condo to work from there, and then decided to go back to my parents' house. So I'm sitting in my parents' office. I'm working 100 hours a week on mining companies. They're sitting beside me, essentially trying to keep the lights on. They actually had closed down one of their restaurants pretty early on. It was one of the weaker ones. They kept all the other 7 alive during that time. But I was sort of firsthand just witnessing them just try to keep the lights on, keep payroll going, the uncertainty with, COVID numbers jump this day, maybe the lockdowns are going to get, more intense the next week. For Canada, it was completely brutal. There was just so much uncertainty for over 2 years. It was just, no one knew what was going to happen. One day delivery was allowed, one day it wasn't. And so I was sitting alongside that. And that was where I said, okay, I should probably, start to think about getting into business again. I had the background in finance. I really wanted to be in restaurants. Ultimately, I decided to try to get into something related to restaurants, but not directly the family business just yet. I knew I had that as an option, and I was helping them out on the side here and there for different things. But I tried to get a job at DoorDash and Uber Eats, 2 of the biggest companies at that time. They're doing incredibly well, and I felt my background in restaurants would help me with that. And I couldn't get a job there. I tried and applied and never got accepted. And so for me, it was a whole new path I had to create. Around that time as well, the Wi-Fi happened to go out of my parents' house. I had to go and work at one of their closed down restaurants to get Wi-Fi. And I did this for about 6 weeks. And so I'm sitting in their closed down, one of the Yield Squire locations. It was, I think, their third location, which is just a classic pub. And I'm sitting in the middle of the pub with 4 of my computer monitors in front of me. And I was completely wired up, and I'd go there at 8 a.m. and I'd work till 2 a.m. In the middle of this pub. And all my colleagues would laugh at me that I'm sitting in a pub almost like in The Big Short scene. But that was what I did for almost 2 months. And halfway through, delivery was now allowed. And so the kitchen started to get a bit busier. There's some bodies in the restaurant. And my mom started to give me paper checks to bring into the restaurant and hand to the chef or tape to the door of the back office. And this was for vendors just to get paid. So the vendors would come in, they drop off their products, Cisco, the alcohol companies, drop off the product and pick up their check and then drop the paper invoice off. And so I'd bring in checks in the morning. I'd take all the paper invoices back in the evening. And then my dad would give the paper invoices to my grandma, who would input this into the accounting software. So that was the first time I was seeing just this like completely manual, very, very outdated process that was taking up a ton of time for restaurants. And so it was around that time that I was like, hey, maybe I could start something, maybe I could be an entrepreneur like my parents, they had done it before, and maybe this isn't software. Maybe I could start this on my own. I met my co-founder, Sam, around that time. He's the CTO and sort of the brains behind a lot of our engineering. And we just started to build some stuff, and we solved a lot of problems early on that my parents were just sharing. We're sitting at the dinner table every evening, and they're talking about the problems and challenges they have during COVID. We go and build a solution after that. And so that was just the early days at Tab. And then after a few weeks, we decided to quit our jobs and go all in it full time. Thanks everyone for listening to my story. On this channel, you'll learn about how Tab Commerce helps restaurants take control of cash flow, unlock higher spending power, and manage expenses with smarter tools built specifically for restaurants. To find out more, visit tabcommerce.com, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.